Hi there, it's Felicia for another episode of Own It for Good, where we talk about all things personal responsibility, taking personal responsibility for our lives, what we want our lives to look like, feel like, be like now, in the future, owning it. Yeah, that's what we do. We talk about that and then what's getting in our way because we all kind of know what we should be doing it, but it takes some work to figure out why we're not doing it. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, just buck up and be responsible, but if you don't know what you're up against internally, we got to do a little investigating first, and then we've got to really meet ourselves where we are in a pretty realistic, compassionate way, and then we can really do some deep work and start moving in the right direction. And that's what I do with myself, and that's what I help my clients with in my practice. So, and if you want the own it words, are self explanatory and owning it for good, all self explanatory. But I also do, it is an acronym and a system. So if you want to learn more about that, I did a very detailed podcast episodes unpacking that. So feel free to go back and listen to those episodes. And today, though, what I wanted to talk about is the Enneagram. And I just love the Enneagram. It has been so transformational for me personally. I was able to make a lot of progress personally before the Enneagram, but I feel like the Enneagram helped me learn some shortcuts on the path to where I wanted to go. And that's what I think it could do for all of us, versus, going through too much trial and error. I mean, it doesn't cut all of that out, but it really can shortcut the process, because it shows you, it just tells you what you maybe you don't want to know about yourself. So do be prepared. The Enneagram is, there's a reason why a lot of people don't get into the Enneagram. One, it's very complicated and complex because, well, humans are. It actually matches the complexity of humans, which is why it's such a useful tool. But the other thing it does, it catches you red-handed in your own shiitake, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So it is the word Enneagram. Ennea means 9, and then gram, diagram. So it's 9 personality types, and it's drawn around a circle, and then there are lines that connect the different numbers. And I won't get into all the complexity of this today, because you can spend years talking about and unpacking the Enneagram. And so that's just too much to do in one episode. For those of you watching on YouTube, I am going to hold up just so you can see a visual of it. And this is from a book called Discovering Your Personality Type by Don Richard Riso. Now, Riso and Hudson are the founders of the Enneagram Institute, which is sort of like the gold standard out there. They also provide a test that I think is $12 if you go to the enneagraminstitute.com if you're interested in taking the test. There are some free ones out there, but anyway, so you can do some investigation on your own. Another good book, that's a primer, is The Road Back to You by Ian Morgan Cron. That is a very good one. He and Suzanne Stabile actually co-authored it. And I like the way that Suzanne Stabile actually describes the Enneagram. And it is a personality system, but it's so much different than some of the other ones you might be familiar with, like the Myers-Briggs or the DISC, or some of the other ones. Again, it matches the complexity of humans. So rather than diagnosing people by what they do, it helps us get to the heart of the matter of why we do what we do. What are our core motivations and fears? And when you know that, that's why it's like a shortcut. Because if I can understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, and it even shines a light in the dark corners and says, yeah, here's what you do that's not so good, then that helps me own it. Like I'm being called out, and I can either like hide my head in the sand and try to go, oh yeah, the Enneagram is stupid, or I could be like, oh my God, they're right. How did they know? How are they inside my head? Like, if the Enneagram leaves you feeling like that when you learn your type, then you probably know you've got the right type, because it's not comfortable. It feels kind of icky and squirmy. It can be a little painful, uh, but it is helpful. And pain is often the path to purpose and transformation and freedom, because it's actually our ego, our lower brain, that is causing a lot of trouble for us. And we're so close to it, we can't see it. So the Enneagram actually is a really helpful tool that can help us cut through a lot of that garbage, and it's like looking in a foggy mirror, and then all of a sudden you get to wipe it off. Speaking of illustrations like that, Suzanne Stabile talks about, I think she gives like this beautiful description of a classroom of young children and who all have vision problems. And their parents, are doing the best they can to try to understand how their kids function in the world and whatnot. And they get invited into the classroom, and they get sat down, and then they get handed these special glasses. And these special glasses actually help the parents see the way the kids see the world. And all of a sudden they're like, oh. And then the parents just have this, because they have a very like real, tangible experience now of, oh my God, and a new appreciation and compassion for how their children are able to function and do so well in the world. So it switches from maybe a little bit of frustration, or I'm trying to do the best I can and understand, but I don't understand because I don't see the world the way you do. But then they get these glasses on, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, now I see. And that's kind of what the Enneagram does for each one of us. Like when we learn the Enneagram, it actually helps us like people better, or at least it helps us to have more compassion, or understand that while they may be acting like a what on the surface, that maybe behind that is a good intent and a good motivation. So I hope that helps you. Just that brief description helps you to be a little bit interested in the Enneagram. For me, the Enneagram, and I use it in my coaching, I use it for myself personally, like probably on a daily basis. It helps me shortcut and get to the heart of the matter, because now I understand more of why I do what I do. And even when I look back in the past, I can see, oh, that makes so much sense. It's like a light bulb just goes off, and you're like, oh, it all makes sense now. Why I was having problems in relationships, why I thought my parents, why I saw the situation when my parents handled this way, and why I took it the way I did, and why my sister took it the way she did, and my other sister took it a different way. Like, have you ever wondered why, in the same family, and you like on the outside looking in, you got 3 kids there and you got 2 parents, but yet they will all have like completely different takes. It's like Gabor Mate, in his work, he says that every child has a different set of parents. And now, the Enneagram actually helps me connect a lot of dots from what I'm listening to with other people, even if they're not referring to the Enneagram, and it just helps the world make sense to me and helps people make sense to me. And even when my daughter who is a 6 on the Enneagram and can be very challenging. Like, it's shifted my parenting and my son, and it's just changed our family completely. Even if they're not all into it, the fact that I'm like embracing this and trying to learn more about them and where they're coming from, the more, the better I and myself when I can catch myself not relating to them very well, and backsliding. Oh, that's another thing. Like, yeah, it kind of keeps you on the right track of owning it, because then you can kind of see when you are backsliding. And in Enneagram speak, they use the words integrated and disintegrated, which if you go back and listen to my episode on the I and own it, I is integrity. So it's operating and trying to live from an integrated place. And when we're integrated or healthy, we can, the Enneagram actually shows us who we can be. Like, if I really own my stuff, here's what I can be. When I'm not owning my stuff very well, then I'm down here looking like this. And then, so it actually gives you a really good gauge and measure on a micro level and on a macro level when you zoom out and even look at the big picture of how life is going for you. Like, you can just look at the Enneagram and do kind of like a little check-in with yourself. So that is sort of an overview. Now, with each number, and for those of you that are either new to the Enneagram, or if you are familiar with it at all, you've probably heard of terms like the deadly sins, or the passion. That's another word that's used for it, or vice. A vice, so that's the dark side or the shadow side of your personality. We all have it. We all have it. If you think you don't, then you're listening to the right show. I'm here to tell you, we all have our stuff, and that's the stuff that is holding us back from owning it. So if the more we can own it, it's actually very liberating. It's painful, but it's liberating, because then we're like, oh yeah, let's get rid of that garbage. Now, I'm making it sound very simple here, and people are complex, and then there is the high side, or the integrated side, or the virtue of what you could be when you're operating, things are going well, your brain's working right, you're sleeping good, you're taking care of yourself, you're very self-aware, you're being very honest, you're owning it. Then you can be, up here. So let's talk about the 9 points. So that's 9 points on a circle, and we'll start with number 1. And that, if you think of, like, for those of you that are listening, think of like a clock face. And we know that there's 12 numbers that go around a clock face. Well, this is kind of similar, except that it's 9. But 1 kind of starts where the 1 would on a clock, and then it goes around, and then 9 sits sort of in the 12 o'clock position. Hopefully I didn't confuse you with that. But the 1 is the perfectionist. And these are probably, I'm married to a 1. So these are your probably accountants. They are very detail oriented. They can be found in any profession. I don't want to pigeonhole any of this. And that's the other thing before I go too much further into the numbers. This is not a personality test that puts you in a box. This tells you what box you spend most of your time in. Again, we're complex beings, so we're not one number all the time. It just kind of tells us where we spend most of our time. And again, it's about why we do what we do, not about what we do. So this helps you know what box you're in and how to get out of that. And then once you understand the Enneagram and you walk into a situation and go, oh, I need to dig more into this number over here, or take on some of these other characteristics. This situation would be better served by these characteristics and this motivation even. You can tap into all of that. You have access to all of it. And the other kind of curious, there's triads, and it's very complex. So there's numbers. Okay, so how should I start? How should I start this? You all can watch me work through this, or hear me work through this. To start with the triads versus the numbers. So maybe it's better to start off with the triads. So there are three overarching personality types within the Enneagram. There are the gut or the anger numbers, which are 8, 9, and 1. Then there is the feeling triad, the heart center. These are the 2s, 3s, and 4s. And then there is the head or the fear triad. Those are the 5, 6s, and 7s. And this actually shows us where an imbalance in our personality is. So if you're in the gut triad, you have an imbalance in your gut. So it's either in overdrive, it's checked out, or it's underactive. So that right there is a very useful clue. Even if you aren't sure what your number is, but you tend to know that you react usually with anger, unless you're a 9, which we'll get there. Or if you feel things first, you might be a 2, 3, or 4. Or if you're in your head, a fear-based, or you tend to think things out first. So you'd be a 5, 6, or 7. So that's probably a good place to start. So there's these triads. Are you head, heart, or gut? And then once we drill down into the numbers, again, we'll start with 1, which is kind of in that 1 o'clock position. If you almost think of like a clock face, is our perfectionist. Or a better word is reformer or an improver. I like the word improver. They walk in, they can see what needs to be done. They are great managers. They're very detail oriented. They're very self-driven. You don't have to stand over them and tell them what to be doing. They're always, the ones that are sort of in charge and telling people what to do. They're probably not going to be able to go to sleep with the, dishes in the sink or things left undone. They are known for having an inner critic. So their passion or their vice or their sin is anger. There's a lot of anger bubbling under the surface because they're often very upset that other people, again, this is one of the things that the Enneagram helps us to see, is that we all walk around thinking that everybody else operates and sees the world and their brains work like ours do. And then we meet the Enneagram and it tells us, oh no, people, we all are very different. And I think we all kind of know that academically, but to really dive into this and see this, and then it's like, oh, and then you can see why we get so frustrated with each other. But then this helps us to maybe not be quite as frustrated with people. And so they're very conscientious. They have a lot of integrity. They want to get everything right. So they are wonderful characteristics to have. I'm married to a 1, and man, the things that I don't have to worry about, I don't tell him thank you enough. It can be easy to take type 1s for granted because they're just automatically doing all these things that the rest of us don't necessarily do. But yeah, so make sure if you are a 1, number 1, that you appreciate yourself and how hard you work and give yourself a little bit of a break and not to be Atlas and carry the world on your shoulders. But if you know a type 1 or are married to 1, appreciate them a little bit more. But when 1s are operating in a healthy way and they can learn to let things be perfectly imperfect, and that there is no such thing as perfection, and that it's okay for other people to do things their way, learn the difference between maybe something's not always right or wrong. Maybe something's just a preference, the way people like to do things. As long as the outcome is good, it's okay if they might want to do it a different way than the type 1 does. The type 1, that might be the work for them to do. And if they can do that work, and guess what? Their virtue is serenity. Oh my gosh. So who wouldn't want that, to be like the serene one? So that is a goal that they can have. They know that that's a potential, that's a God-given thing that God has put into the type 1. Not just that they can be detail-oriented and the ones that are fixing everything, but if they can relax a little bit and realize, hey, well, maybe God's got this. Maybe God knows something I don't know, and I can just relax and let this be part of his plan versus me trying to be in control and being a little G God, then they can relax into who God truly created them to be, which is serene. That's something to work for. Okay, on to the type 2. And oh shoot, I was just using here it is. Okay. I was using a website. So I'm just sitting here at my desk and I was going through this. You'll have to bear with me. I wanted to look at this. Okay. Oh, here we are. Okay. I found a website that I really liked, the diagram that was very easy for me to see. And so I can talk with you with, reference. So type 2 is our helper. And their deadly sin or passion or vice is pride. So they can walk in the room, their skill set is amazing. Like, these are our caretakers, our hostesses with the mostest. Like, they can walk in and know they're probably, a lot of them are empaths. They can walk into a room and immediately know, like, who needs what. They can feel like we've moved into the feeling triad. So they're our overfeelers. They have an imbalance. They overfeel. And sometimes that can get them in trouble because they can get very frustrated. And they need help, but they won't ask for it because a helper can't ask for help. They can't need help, but they do. And that's also their love language. They're expecting, because this is how they see the world, they expect other people to operate the same way. And we're over here going, wow, they really like helping. Oh, that's awesome. And we're not even thinking that they need help because they look like they've got it under control. So they can get very prideful and they can get very angry as well in that pridefulness. And they can, really like, I really need help. They might get passive aggressive. Oh no, I'm over here. I've got it. No, you sit there and sit on your butt while I go over here. Yeah. But when they can realize, oh, other people don't operate this way, and yes, I do need help, and I can ask for it, their virtue is humility. So again, two sides of the same coin, and we want to strive to the one that God has truly designed us for, versus where our own little g God ego tries to get us to go and get caught up in that drama. 3s are our achievers. These are probably a lot of our CEOs. I've heard some people say that if they could even give America, the country, a Enneagram type, it would be a 3. Like, there's a lot of us that have a lot of 3 qualities, and they are getting it done. Similar to 1s. 1s and 3s can often get mistyped, but 3s aren't afraid to cut corners, where a 1 is gonna, like, they're getting a lot done, but they're only gonna do it right or perfectly. A 3 is like, let's just get it done. And they're a little bit more image driven too. They are driven, they like a lot of recognition. So I think there's a lot of, I've heard it said that a lot of our actors and actresses and could be threes, because they see performing. They're also called the performers. They feel like they need to perform to be loved and valued. So they are just getting it done. Their deadly sin is self-deceit. Yeah, they can really deceive themselves through their achievements and performance, which is kind of sad, when you think about it. That's what, the Enneagram just really helps us see other humans, almost like the children inside they were, like just so innocent. And their virtue, though, is veracity or truth. So when they can really own it, they will be the most hardworking, getting it done, truthful, and authentic people that you will meet when they can really own it. So we'll move on to number 4, because I realize I'm getting a little long-winded here. And so I want to make sure this podcast isn't too long. And I also have to pick up my daughter from swim practice soon. So number 4 is the individualist. They are going to be probably our eccentric artists, musicians, maybe hippie dippy, funky people out there. They could be in any people, but they really, they feel like they need to be unique and special. And the dark side of that, or the sin or the passion or the vice, could be envy, because they look at other people and they see what might be missing in them. Oh, only if so they're also called the romantic. And so that's where the romanticism. So there's a lot of push and pull with them. Oh, they only feel loved maybe if they're being pursued, because that's evidence that something, is valued in them, that they're unique, they're special, they're misunderstood. So there's a lot of that. But when they are in their virtue, and as God created them to be, when they can get out of their own way and own it, their virtue is equanimity. So they can really feel fulfilled and on purpose and complete. And they aren't constantly doing that sort of dance with people of, I love you, I hate you, I love you, leave me alone, oh, come back. They can sort of get a little bit out of the drama of that. 4s also can really spend a lot of time in melancholy. So that is one thing that kind of is a signature keystone of 4s. They love their emotions. They love to get down into the nitty gritty of all the emotions. I have a sister that's a 4, and I've heard her even say, it's like I can talk to her in the morning, and by lunch it's going to be a different person, and by dinner it's a different person. It's like a roller coaster in there. And they really, they are, and the 3s, how I said each one is, they're out of touch with some of their feelings. So the 2s can be kind of out of touch with their feelings. And I think earlier I misspoke and said they were overfeelers. I think they can overfeel some of the positive emotions, but they shy away from and run away from any negative emotions. 3s are just like, they are feelings. What feelings? But they're in the feelings triad. So they might actually seem very direct and like, we don't have time for feelings. They're getting in the way of getting things done. So that's part of why they're self-deceptive. And the 4s are the overfeelers, like, oh, everything's very dramatic. Anyway, okay, 5s are the, what is the name for the 5? The thinkers. Or the investigator. That is also another thing that they're known for. And that is the beginning of the head triad. So they're definitely overthinking. Their passion or vice is avarice, or they like to kind of hoard. They can hoard information. So they also tend to have their lives in silos. So they might have their book club buddies over here, and their golf buddies over here, and church people over here, and then they all don't really know each other. And then they all go to his funeral, Joe's funeral, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know you knew Joe." They can and they can hoard their energy too. They have a limited amount of energy, similar to what a 9 does, and they can even, that's part of their hoarding. They're hoarding their resources, and they like to know everything. They feel power and knowledge of knowing a lot of things. But they don't necessarily like to share that knowledge, which is kind of an interesting characteristic. And so maybe a lot of professors out there, although I do think professors do share their knowledge, but they might not be overly, anyway. But their virtue is non-attachment. So they can learn to let go and share and not hold on to, their ideas, their head knowledge, the fear. And again, they're all kind of driven by fear in the thinking triad. And the 6, this is where my daughter is. She is, the 6 is often known as the loyalist, which is interesting because in order to become loyal to something, you've got to really test. You've got to test whether or not is worthy of your loyalty. But once they're in, they're all in. But it can be an exhausting process to get on their loyalty list. But they do really like authority. They like authoritarian systems, so politics, churches, schools. That is and they're always questioning, very skeptical. They are fear driven. That is their deadly sin or vice, constant fear, like, what if, and yeah, so that can be overdone, and it does get overdone with 6s when they're not, when they're in disintegration or in stress. But their virtue is courage. And I've actually seen a lot of this in my daughter. When she can get out of her own way and overcome it, you see a lot of courage. So they think that's the most common personality type of all the personality types. There's probably more 6s than anything else. Probably 6s, 3s, and 9s are the most common types. And 6s are our law and order people. They're the glue that holds society together. Probably a lot of the people in government, in our, governmental systems of schools and maybe principals and lawyers, questioning, making sure, thinking of everything, their contingencies, their planners. They are going to make sure that the rest of us either don't fly off, because our pie in the sky ideas, and keep our feet planted on the ground, as frustrating as it might be sometimes. They keep us all safe, and they think of things that some of the rest of us don't think about. And so that is often their own pitfall too, that they see when they can learn and realize, oh, not everybody else is fear driven. When they look at other people and go, well, why aren't you questioning this? I can't believe you don't blah, 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 So, and then their eyes can be open to that. And their virtue, yes, we talked about that, is courage. So 7s are the enthusiast, or the generalist is what this book, Riso, describes it as. But the enthusiast, sort of the Peter Pan, the eternal optimist, always up for a good time. Fun. They reframe everything into positive. Even if something negative happened, they'll find the silver lining to it. But their sin or their vice or their passion is gluttony. Like, too much fun is never enough fun. Too much, there's never too much. No such thing as too much. They want more. They're driven by the fear of missing out. They often struggle with commitment because there might be something better over there. I don't, but the good side, and what God truly designed them for, when they can get out of their own way and own it, is sobriety, or moderation might be another good word, where they really learn how to be temperate in life, and not gorge themselves on whether it's food or fun or sex or drugs and alcohol, whatever it is. They learn to be sober in that. And sober doesn't mean, just without alcohol, but it means like clear-minded or temperate. Okay, we're almost done. And so number 8 is the challenger. And hold on just a minute. Okay, sorry. My husband's going to go get the daughter, so we're good. I can spend a few more minutes with you. But I'm going to wrap this up and park this car here soon. The number 8 is the challenger. And this is often described as like the bull in the china shop, like people that like to challenge just for the sake of challenging. They are often loud, gregarious, they're large and in charge, is probably just a short and sweet way to put it. They are direct. They are very much in touch with their anger. They are comfortable asserting and using their anger. So we're up into the anger triad now, or the gut triad. They're comfortable with that. That's how they know that you are something. They want to push up against you. They want to challenge you. So, and their passion or deadly sin is lust. So similar to a 7, it's, I want it all and I want it now and it's mine and I deserve it and you're not going to tell me I can't have it. So they can, there might be a lust for power, a lust for prestige, a lust for, being the one that is the center of the attention. So they have to be on guard for their desires. They have a lot of strong desires that they want satisfied when they are not operating in health. And again, when I talk about those, their default setting, these are the lower, like when we're just totally listening to our lower brain and our ego. This is where we all can go with each of the types. But when the 8s or the challengers are operating in health, another word for them might also be the leader. That's what Riso calls them, the leaders. So they might, when they are operating with who God created them to be, their virtue is innocence. So they can see themselves, they can let themselves be vulnerable again. They can see other people. They can see that vulnerability is a good thing. It's a desirable thing. And and all of these things, when we can get to this way, we feel free. We feel free to be who we really are, who God created us to be. So that's the other beautiful thing I love about the Enneagram, is that when I pair and this is me personally, but when I pair the Enneagram with my understanding of God and the gospel, man, that's a powerful combination, because Jesus represents the perfect, full personality of all of these things. And then we all are fragments of that. We are created in the image, but we are not that. But this gives us a path of growth, and something to aim for, and that it's possible. Okay, so the final one is the 9. This is what yours truly is. And I was actually mistyped as a 2 the first couple of times I was introduced to the Enneagram, and I didn't really I don't know, I just wasn't interested in it. It was probably about 5 to 7 years ago. And I was like, oh yeah, 2 helper. It made total sense to me. I totally am very helpful. But when I took the Enneagram this past year and then really dove into the books and the material, I was like, oh, I'm not a 2. I'm a 9. I'm a 9, which is the peacemaker. Um, this is where I got called out and where it was a little bit painful there for me for a while. And I had a lot of, I felt like I had a lot of apologizing to do. I still like feel like, but gosh, guys, I'm going to tell you, like, this helps me so much see that when I feel some of these tendencies coming on, or even if my husband, if I don't see them, but my husband or somebody else might, and then they know they know enough about the Enneagram to maybe tell me, or I'm just like, all of a sudden it'd be like, oh, I shake my head like, oh yeah, and clear my head, and I'm like, oh yeah, I was totally falling into some of my default settings, and then I can kind of get myself out of it. I'm not stuck there anymore. Again, this tells you what box you're in and how to get the F out. That's what we want. We don't want to be this, but it shows you what you can be if you're not being intentional, if you're not, constantly asking yourself, okay, what am I going to do about this? Do I have a plan of action? Is this feel like I have integrity, that I'm integrated? Or does this feel like, ugh, I'm too tired, I just don't want to make a decision? Anyway, you can tell I'm like delaying for telling you my deadly sin is sloth. Oh my gosh, you guys, I almost got caught in it today. Like I feel like I come to you every week now sliding into first base, like going, oh my God, I made it barely. Like I still struggle with this, like being organized and like doing things. I'm a work in progress, but I've set an intention that I want to get this podcast done every Wednesday. And it seems like I have a plan. I could show you my planner and I'm barely sticking to it, but somehow procrastination will still sneak in. Like, ugh. Anyway, I'm definitely working my way out of this one. But I'm showing up, even if it's late and with my sober sis hat on and no makeup. That's the price I pay for not being organized. But I'm not going into that pit of slothness. I'm not doing it. I'm here because guess what my virtue is that I'm striving for, and it may take me another 10, 20 years or forever to get to it. Maybe I'll never get there, but it's gonna be an adventure trying. My virtue is right action. And for sloth, for those of you that might be nines out there, sloth is not, or think you might be, sloth is not just physical, like, we all know what a sloth is, but a sloth can show up in a lot of ways, being emotionally unavailable. This is we're in the anger triad, and we're the ones that are out of touch with it. People will say, you're angry. I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't even know what that feels like to be angry. I don't get angry. I don't do that. Oh yeah, I do. And when I got caught in this, and it used to show up a lot with either passive aggressiveness, stubbornness, or just plain disengagement. And that was part of why I fell into the trap of over drinking, because it was easier just to pour a glass of Chardonnay than to have the fight, or to tell my kids for the umpteenth time and then enforce what I said. It was like, well, F it. I'll just have a glass Chardonnay and watch my Netflix and eat my food and I'll be fine. So that is kind of how sloth was showing up for me. And oh boy, yeah, still climbing my way out of that box, but I'm making progress. So that's what I really want to share with you all overall, as I bump up against 45 minutes of running my mouth, is that the Enneagram is worth spending some time in. And I have only just barely scratched the surface. We didn't even get into wings and arrows and all of that stuff. But just a brief overview of why it's important to me and why I use it in owning it, because I feel like it's a shortcut. It shows us a secret hidden passage, in the maze that we can get through quicker, or underground tunnels in the complicated labyrinth. I don't know, whatever analogy works for you. But, and why not? Why not get some help? When you can understand yourself better and understand people that you're in relationship with better, even if they don't give a rat's ass about it, like it will help you. It will help your relationships, and it will help you, whatever it is you're dealing with. If you're feeling overwhelmed and stuck, if you feel like you're the one taking care of everything and nobody's doing anything, and why can't I, get the promotion that I want at work? Why am I still, whatever it is that you're struggling with, feel free to reach out to me and call me. I'll leave my website and email, and Facebook and all the different ways you can find me, and call me, and I can help you own it, for good. Because when we're all operating in health and integrity and aiming towards our virtue and what we could be and our living out our potential, could you imagine? Like the ripple effect of that, like it's not only going to be good for you, it's going to be good for everybody around you, your community, and then maybe you can inspire somebody to also make changes. Like, we've only got one trip on this planet, and I don't know about you, but I don't have any more time to waste. I've wasted enough time. So, in the Enneagram and any help things that I can find, and one day we'll spend a whole episode or maybe 5 on, boundaries and some other things that are also very helpful topics to discuss. But I'm sure I'll be talking lots more about the Enneagram. Maybe I'll do a whole Enneagram series and talking about each of the numbers and even all the wings and all the arrows and all the, yeah. So if you're a geek like me and you love digging into complex information and you haven't checked out the Enneagram yet, I invite you to do that. You can learn a lot more at the enneagraminstitute.com if you want to take a test there. There's lots of other free tests online as well. There's also a nice little app that I think is $3 or $4 called the Ennea app, and I think it's available on Android and iPhone. There's just a couple of quick resources, and I would be happy also, again, just to talk with you further about it and help you figure out what type you are, or if you know what type you are and you're like, help me use this to own it, I'm your girl. All right, bye for now.